Hi, everyone. I am Brittany.
I'm Lauren.
And we are the Whining Witches. Welcome to our podcast where we discuss different subjects in the witchcraft and pagan communities.
We think that we have different perspectives and opinions compared to what we've encountered a lot in different communities. And so we would like to share them with you.
Yeah, so a little bit about us. Again, am Brittany, and I am actually an aerospace engineer. I've been in the STEM community. I've been in the STEM community for a while, and it's really, I think it gives me a different perspective on the witching community and witchcraft as a practice. And I guess I will plug my favorite brewery, which is Martin House. If you are in DFW, make sure you go check them out.
Once again, my name's Lauren. I'm currently completing my master's degree in art. I would consider myself a multidisciplinary artist. I'm also heavily neurodivergent, which definitely affects my practice and what I involve myself in and my commitments. Martin House is also one of my favorite breweries. So definitely have to plug them, and maybe they'll sponsor us one day.
So, Lauren, what is your relationship with religion?
So I actually have a really long and kind of complicated relationship with religion. I was raised Southern Baptist before transitioning into deism, and then eventually transferring into atheism before Wiccan, before now Pagan.
So that is a wild journey, but I guess for those of the audience that's listening, explain what deism is.
So deism is a form of Christianity that was practiced by the founding fathers of the United States. There's some key different perspectives compared to regular Christianity. They don't believe in miracles, and they don't believe that God is involved in the everyday actions of humanity.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think I relate a lot to the atheism side of things because I think as a kid, I sort of considered myself an atheist. I guess in reality, people considered me an atheist. I don't like to really label a lot of the things that I feel about myself, but I guess now as I've gotten older, it is more agnostic. So I don't think that there's necessarily nothing. I just don't think there is the proof we need to make that final decision.
Yeah.
So my relationship with religion is really based around that. I've gone to church a lot. I used to go to church with my grandmom like every summer, and really the only part of church I ever enjoyed and still enjoy to this day is the music.
I was going to say the food.
Well, the food is good, especially down south because you lived in Florida. So the food, and as a tourist, definitely the food, but really the music, like while I was there. But because I don't have a set relationship with religion, I oftentimes will go to other practices a lot. So I've gone to, I grew up in Philly, so I grew up around a lot of Italians. So I've been to Mass. I've also been to Mass with my Trinidadian friends, which is a little different. So I really enjoy kind of almost being a spectator, but I don't want to be involved. So.
Yeah, I definitely have a long history and love of like world mythology and religions. And anytime I travel, I definitely like to go to the churches and like the religious spaces that different cultures exist. Because I do think magic exists there.
For sure. I think there's a bigger intersect between magic and religion than people,
absolutely,
especially within the religious communities, are willing to admit. So you said that you went through a phase of going through Wicca and all of that. So what actually got you into witchcraft?
So I did start out labeling myself as Wiccan, specifically when I left a relationship and I was going through the process of like rediscovering myself, trying to be the most authentic me. And I did really love a lot of the concepts. They made sense to me. They explained a lot of things about what I experienced in childhood, which I know you have a similar kind of experience. And then really, and I'll kind of tip my hat to like the neurodivergence in me. It was so difficult for me to keep up with.
Was
like
it?
The commitments and the Sabbaths and the new moon and the full moon and just everything. I was like really falling behind, which then made me feel bad. And
you felt guilty,
yeah,
which is
not
still
committed
a product
enough
of being like in a religion.
Yeah,
it's the same thing.
Yeah, and so I slowly kind of transitioned out of that, recognizing that my practice is my practice, and really just kind of loosened the term to pagan.
Yeah. And so just to recap on that, you just consider yourself a general pagan. You don't really subscribe to anything specific. Yeah. So I guess for me, I got into witchcraft because of you. I think that I've always had an interest in it. I've always been involved in like alternative things ever since I was a kid. But my sciencey brain could not rationalize that. Yeah. So it wasn't until like, oh my gosh, until like it was like knowing you for like 6 years before I was just like, okay, can you just sit me down and talk to me about this?
I literally brought like a stack of books to our house. I was like, yes, here I am.
Yes. So we got back together, actually did like research, and she showed me some books and stuff. But a lot of it was spurred because of the loss of my cousin, which was very traumatic and very sudden. It was very unexpected. He wasn't sick or anything. So I just needed ways to bring like self-care and like balance back into my life. And it started with diving through the rabbit hole of like yoga and like meditation. And then suddenly like these subjects of witchcraft that can help you do that. I'm like, okay, I'll just ask Lauren about it. And a lot of it really made sense. And I felt like that was really the hole that I was looking for. But again, my sciencey brain just wouldn't let me do that. But after like practicing for a while, I realized that like witchcraft is really just the opposite face of the same coin as science.
I agree.
So it's just like, there's a saying that magic is just science we haven't discovered yet. Yeah. So that's how I navigate my practice a lot. Yeah. And I know that you being an artist, how do you feel about that? Like the relationship between science and witchcraft?
So I've always considered myself a very intuitive person. And I think especially in like American culture, that's a really dangerous word, especially as like a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it really just explained things to me.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I left organized religion was because nobody could answer my questions.
Yeah.
Or I was just
I relate a lot to that.
Yeah, I was just told no. You know, don't think about that. Don't ask that question. And I do love science and I love the earth. And I think there's so much that we don't know, that having a space that was like, no, like there's this energy that, you know, moves these actions forward. Yeah. Which is very Newton.
Yes.
You know, and so I definitely think they go hand in hand.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And I know you mentioned the earth a lot, and I know that's sort of why you were getting into Wicca as well. So how do you, or if you do, how do you label your craft?
What do you mean?
Like, so, you know, a lot of people will consider themselves green witches or like kitchen witches. Do you do that?
I don't, because I'm just, I'm a really lazy witch. Yeah. Like, I do think, like, I'm not a person who cooks a lot, but I know a lot of people who do. Yeah. And especially in the South, you know, we always say you can taste love in your cooking.
Love is like an ingredient.
Yeah. And so that's very kitchen witch to me.
It is.
And love green witches. You know, I've met people who call themselves storm witches. And I just really don't label myself. And just let...
You just practice how you
just practice. Let it go where it goes. Do you label yourself?
I don't, but so coming into witchcraft when it became extremely popular in social media, there is this pressure to label yourself. And as a new witch, people will always ask you, well, what kind of witch are you?
Yeah.
And it's like asking, like, what kind of person are you?
Yeah.
How do you answer that, right? And I already mentioned earlier that I don't like to label myself.
Yeah.
So I don't, but I always tell people that other people usually describe me as like a green witch or probably eclectic.
Okay. Eclectic.
So, because, I usually show people my plants and like my little garden.
Yeah.
So people tend to label me, but I don't necessarily. I don't.
And the label of eclectic is so interesting to me because it's like you had to label something that
is not labelable.
Isn't anything like, okay.
You're like everything.
Yeah.
So you put a label on everything.
Yeah.
So we've been using like witch, pagan, Wiccan. Let's discuss the differences.
Okay.
So I will let you describe. I'll let you start.
Okay. So I'll start with Wiccan. And I did not verify my dates before I said this. This is purely based off of memory. So Wiccan is inspired by the historical traditions of ancient cultures. A lot of times, specifically as a white person, you're talking, ancient people from England, Germany, the Celts, like
more European.
Like Northern European cultures. It was kind of made official by old dude.
She means Gerald Gardner.
I think in the 60s. And it became more of like an organized religion. They do practice the Sabbaths, which are dedicated holidays, mostly based around the changing of seasons, which I do enjoy. And then you have the idea of like a coven, being sworn into a coven. And then I know probably within the 90s up until now, there is this resurgence of solitary practitioners within Wicca, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize that there are actually different, I guess I'll call them sects. There are different sects of Wicca. So like I think I might butcher the pronunciation, but like Gerardian or
Gardenarian.
Yeah,
I'll say gardening.
Gardenarian Wiccan is actually somewhat of a closed practice. You have to be initiated, go through the process, and then you sort of graduate into it. I'm using the wrong terms because I don't follow this, but you get what I'm saying. And then you kind of have this newer age Wicca that introduces these solitary practices and stuff like that. But did you know, fun fact I learned recently about Wicca is that there is actually a lot of debate whether Wicca is really based off of ancient practices or not.
It's
we could do a whole episode on that, so we will.
It's a whole controversy.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
So we have Wicca. How do you describe paganism?
Oh gosh. So based off of being an artist. This, what I'm about to articulate is very much based off of my study of art history. So I really consider a pagan anyone who practices an idea of religion outside of the three major religions. And I'll include like Sikhs and Buddha in that too. So outside of Sikh, Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, or Christianity. I think as far as like defining it, it would be kind of anything outside of that. Because even like people in Mexico or Latin America who practice their traditional religions, you could argue that they are pagans.
I think I agree with that as well, because there are specific pagan practices that are, I will say, to the point of standard. I know, like, for instance, there's Norse pagan, not North. And there are specific things as a Norse pagan that you do. But I think in general, I also would just categorize it as sort of the umbrella term of everything outside of those other religions.
And I think you could also argue that it's based off of your historical context within your family and your culture. So everyone kind of practices a bit different depending on, you know, the traditions of your family and the opinions of your family.
Yeah. And I think also too, region can play a role, especially you enjoy the changing of the seasons, but live in Texas. So you have the changing of 2 seasons, where I have the changing of 4 seasons.
I get 1 week of spring.
1 week. So you have a week to celebrate spring. I have like 3 months. So
best week of my life.
Right. And that can really shape, especially if your family is from here, that really shapes how you interact with the different seasons. So you might not have the relationship with spring or winter that someone else does. And then we have witchcraft, which I feel
I'll let you define that one.
So I feel like witchcraft tends to just be lumped into one or both of the other two. You can be pagan and a witch. You can be Wiccan and a witch, but you don't have to be either or to be a witch. And I think that especially a lot of people who are just coming into the practice with the rise of social media and stuff don't realize that. So that's where like the pressures of labeling yourself come in. But witchcraft is just a practice, you know, and you can practice things how you're going to practice things. There really are no rules. And I think that's really hard for people coming from organized religion to rationalize. And I'm sure you relate a lot to that, being a recovering Baptist. So, but yeah, I think that's also part of what I was able to really enjoy about witchcraft. It didn't feel like the pressures of having to devote myself to anyone or anything. And if something no longer serves me, I can just, you know, as I evolve, my practice can evolve.
And I will state the opinion that I absolutely think Christian witches exist.
Oh, for sure.
Jewish witches, you know, people who practice Catholicism. And I feel like a lot of times those voices are removed from online communities, almost like they're practicing like heresy. And it's like, no, like there are spaces for those people as well.
It's definitely an interesting topic. We'll discuss that in more detail later, but I actually had that happen today. Somebody in one of the chats that I'm in was like, hey, you know, I've been really called to practice witchcraft again, but I am in the middle of studying like Islam. And she's like, I've converted to this religion. How do I rationalize that? I'm like, you don't have to.
Live your best life.
And I think people don't realize like a lot of religions have this innate disdain or fear of witchcraft. So you're also internalizing that. So you have to basically unpack that and allow yourself to work through that.
And that fear is based off of manipulated history.
Oh, for sure.
Which we'll talk about.
That is an episode in and of itself. So another thing that we'll talk about is defining spells versus rituals, because I feel like these are going to be topics we throw out a lot. So I just want to make sure that we're all at least understanding from our perspective what we mean when we say that. So how do you define spells and rituals?
So a spell to me is a singular act to where in exchange for energy or an object or a action that you're requesting a specific response. So I give up, you know, this idea or this pain in exchange for, you know, peace or being able to breathe or, you know, like it's a specific exchange that happens once and it's done. Ritual, I think, very much applies to religion much larger and is a continuous act or something that you do often to create a specific space or headspace.
It's almost like setting the mood.
You know, people drink their cup of coffee every morning to start their day. That's a ritual. In Catholicism when they walk down the aisle and
with the swinging,
not Catholics.
That was one of my favorite parts of Mass, honestly. I should have known I was a witch a lot sooner.
Or breaking the bread, drinking the wine, and Jesus. Those are all rituals.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I think also to caveat about spells is they're one and done, but obviously you can redo them. We're not saying that you should never redo a spell again. So if you do like a protection spell, it's not that you can't do it again. It's just there's a start and finish, and then you get a goal. Whereas like a ritual is usually just a reoccurring thing that you do for yourself or for your space.
Yeah. And spells don't have to finish instantly either.
Right.
I think a lot of people will think that.
Yeah.
I know some witches do have very lengthy spells, especially when you're talking about banishing or cutting the cord or something like that.
And I think that 7-day candles exist. So like when I did my money bowl spell, I consider that a spell that I did, but I burnt that candle for 7 days. So it's not like, okay, I spent an hour doing this and I'm done. And then also that actually touches on a good point that people don't realize that just because you finish the spell does not mean it's going to work immediately. I think there are certain things that you do that do start to work immediately. Like I think protection spells, cleansing, those things. But if you're wanting a more, I would say, intricate response, it will take a while. And there's like a level of impatience that people have.
Yeah. I don't do long spells. So,
well, even if it's like a short spell, if it's just like, if you do like a quick little money spell and make a little money jar and people are like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to get $1 million. I know that's not how it works.
Yeah. So with that, I will say also, I think a lot of new witches struggle with this. Spells have to be reasonable.
Yes.
You can't ask the universe for $1 million. Like you're not going to get $1 million. If you've ended a relationship and the other person is really moved on, they're not going to come back to you. Right. And it's not the universe's response or responsibility to provide that for you.
Right. So. That's actually a good point. And I feel like maybe we should talk about this in depth later is the ethics of spell work. Yeah. Because it's a huge debate. Yeah. And I know the two big ones, I'm sure there are more, but the two big ones are baneful magic and love spells. Yeah. And I have opinions on both. But that's that on spells and rituals. And let's talk about our last topic, which are altars. So for those of you who don't know, altars are just a sacred space that a witch will set up, or a pagan or a Wiccan will set up. And it's just their space to do whatever. And so there are different types of altars. You can dedicate it to a deity, that it could be a working altar. It could just be like a meditation space. So what's your altar?
So my altar, so in the specifically coming from Wicca, a lot of people have the idea that you can't share your altar or that it should be hidden.
Yeah. The hidden part and
that's a debatable topic. So it took
highly debated.
Yeah. So it took me a long time to kind of figure out what worked best for me. But mine is specifically in a section of my room that is mostly inhabited by me and my cats. It's on the top of a bookshelf. I do have kind of the traditional Wiccan layout. I have the bells, the candlestick holders, the shell, and then I have a ton of like crystals and rocks and other things that I've collected that go into my practice. But anybody who walks into the room, it is visible. They might not immediately know what it is, but it is closed off, so to speak, from public view.
Right. So you don't share your altar on social media or like to other people?
I have shared parts of it. So specifically, there was one time that I overburned my sage. And, my smoke detector was going off. And I did share a picture of like the fire I basically started. But for the most part, no, I don't post pictures of it on social media.
Is it just because of your relationship with social media, or do you just feel like it's a little taboo to do?
I don't think it's taboo, but it's such a private space for me. And the way that I use it, it really is a place for me to ground myself and pray and think and connect. And that's just not something that I believe strangers should have access to.
Yeah. And, you know, I totally agree with that. If that's sort of like what you are setting as your safe space, then why show it with the world? And see, I'm a little different. My altar is a working altar. And so that means my altar changes a lot based off of what I'm doing. And it also depends on, I move a lot. So it depends on the space that I'm in. So while sometimes it can look fairly traditional, like I had a bell and crystals and stuff on it at one point. When I'm working, I have to move all that stuff, and then I have my workings on it. So more recently, after I moved, I downsized. I didn't have the space for a huge layout. I actually got a modular altar. So
that's cool.
It's like a little cart, and it's a wooden cart, and it has leaves that will fold up and down.
Okay, so this is different than the one I saw.
Maybe.
Okay.
Did you see the one in my closet?
No.
Oh, yeah, then it's different.
Okay.
So I haven't shown many pictures on social media because I'm usually working on it a lot more than I was when I was just starting. So, but basically it just has these little wings that fold out, and then there's a removable tray on top. The tray itself is really what I consider to be the altar.
Interesting.
Even though there's the whole thing. So anytime I'm doing things for like my shop or whatever, and I need the wings, I'll move the tray, put it off to the side, and I'll work on it. Although inside I still have all my I have some herbs, oils, candles. That's where I store all the stuff I need for my workings. So it is always different.
And mine stays pretty much the same. I do sometimes go back and clean up eventually. But so sometimes I'll rearrange things because I do have a few statues and stuff that I've inherited that I keep on there. But for the most part, it's still kind of a basic layout. I realized since I use mine a lot, I tend to have a lot of things on hand that I use regularly. It's kind of like almost having the spices you use normally in the front of your pantry. That's how my altar is. So right now on my tray, I have one decorative thing because I don't have the space to add a lot of decorative things. And then I have my Florida water, I have some salt, and then more recently, like the different herbs that I was recently using. And then I have like so it's like trayception. I have another little tray on it because that way I can peel up any candle wax that gets on it. So and I usually don't mind showing my altar as long as I don't have workings on it, which is why I haven't shown it recently. But what's your opinion in general? Do you have it doesn't sound like you do, but do you have like hard set opinions on people showing their altar or not? I think it's really whatever works best for that person. You know, if someone's in a position in their life to where they are because I know a lot of times in like roommate situations, both of them may end up being witches or practicing witchcraft. And in those cases, it makes sense to me to share your altar and your space with somebody else. So I really just think it's whatever works best for that person. And then also, you know, there are organized religions who also have similar.
That's very true.
You know,
just like going back to the churches. You see the altars, you see people lighting candles.
Or at certain metaphysical shops who do have public altars. You know, those are experienced by every person who comes in.
And so. I think creating, again, having these hard set rules that people will say on social media is just, I feel, an offset of having experienced those rules in religions. Where you're just, I think there's an innate need to set up rules. But I think also they don't realize that it stems from a lot of times historically people had to hide those things.
Colonization, patriarchy, you know,
like,
persecution.
Exactly. Like I know specifically in hoodoo, and hoodoo exists because of that. So those issues don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they exist, but not on such a
Oh,
grand scale.
Nobody's
You're not
breaking into your house like, oh,
right.
you know,
You're
like,
not. I mean, some
hopefully
places.
not. Yeah.
I do know that there are some countries that are still very
Yes.
bad, but just in general, like to overgeneralize, it's not like it was back in the day, and you had to hide your altar. And that actually, I'm curious about your opinion on this. Do you think people should show others their book of shadows?
So compared to your book of shadows, mine is severely lacking.
Well, there's no
haven't written in it in probably over a year.
There's no rule for book of shadows. You work in it as you need to work in it.
And so the way I use mine is specifically for memories when I'm studying. If I do like a tarot spread and it's like a really deep, important topic, I'll write it out. So those things I probably wouldn't show a normal person. And at the end of the day, they probably wouldn't make sense to a normal person just because of the way I work. But with yours, and because of the work that I know you put in it and its connection to your practice, it makes sense to me that you would show somebody yours. So it really just is how you work and what's best for you. But I know a lot of people won't.
And it's a huge debate too, and people will like fight to the death about their opinion on this. I'm the same. I think that if someone has something that's more of a personal journal, there's probably no reason to show it. I also know people tend to use the word grimoire and book of shadows interchangeably. If your book is more of a grimoire, that's widely accepted information anyway, so go ahead and show it off. But I know for me, I have like different levels of things in my book of shadows. So some are things that I've created myself and I wouldn't share with people. But then there are things that are more or less just small tweaks of really commonly accepted spells. So I've shared like my charming spell with people, but there's certain like rituals in there that I just blank out so people can't see, but the overall process is still, and they can see the page and all of that.
It's also interesting because it is such like a controversial opinion. But there's so many covens that publish their book of shadows. Like I think I have 2 books that has the book of shadows of a different coven in it. So it is interesting that it's.
I think it boils down to how you practice and how you interact with people in your practice. So I think, you know, because my practice started off as a self-care or like self-improvement kind of thing, why wouldn't I share that with people? There are things that I want to self-care or self-improve on that I might not share with people. But as a whole, like if I create a really great ritual bath or something that I'm like, this could help a lot of people, why wouldn't I share it? You know? So I think there's also that taboo, again, from like times where you could not share these things. You could be persecuted for it, and people don't realize they're just perpetuating an old issue that no longer exists. So, all right. Well, that was all of our topics. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know. I think that's it.
Okay.
Unless if you want to keep going.
No, I know we could talk forever.
I know we really could.
We actually are at the 30-minute mark, so we're like, we're good to go. And so our next topic is going to be about labels. So we're going to dive a little deeper into our opinion on labels. I have a lot of them that I did not, I didn't give away yet, hopefully. So yeah, you can join us for the live stream on Patreon, or you can watch the recap on YouTube, or you can listen to us on anywhere where you listen to podcasts. All right, guys, we will catch you on the flip side.
Thank you.